Welcome back to the Midday Bell. Today, we're exploring how artificial intelligence is reshaping the future of clinical trials. Joining me is George Achilles, CEO of NetraMark, and Dr. Luca Pani, the company's Chief Innovation and Regulatory Officer. Today, we're going to discuss how their explainable AI platform, Netra AI, is helping pharmaceutical companies design smarter, faster, and more successful studies. So before I introduce this team, I just want to begin by saying that this interview is purely informational and educational. I was not compensated for this interview. I just think it's a fantastic company. I got to meet the CEO recently and I'm very impressed with the technology that they've built and the future that they have. And so I really wanted to share the story with my audience. So thank you, George and Dr. Luca, for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
First off, George, let's begin with you, if you don't mind. Can you tell us a little bit about your title, a bit about your background, and what brought you to lead NetraMark into the world of AI-driven clinical trial innovation?
Perfect. Well, thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity, Rebecca, to talk about the company. I know that we've been on the road together and you've witnessed me talk about the company. It's always enjoyable and I'm very excited and passionate about it.
Good.
And I'm very excited today because on top of me being on here, I get to do this with Dr. Luca Pani, who is a friend and who is doing a great job from a innovation and regulatory perspective, leading this business with me. So my background, I'm the CEO of NetraMark. My background has really been over 25, 30 years in technology. I started my career at IBM. I spent many years at IBM. Was part of a team that managed a $100 million business there. I've gone on to start e-commerce companies, do businesses in the nanotechnology space, media, all sorts of different ventures. I've been a lifetime entrepreneur. And what always compels me as an entrepreneur is when you can find those situations where there is a clear problem in an industry that needs to be solved. There is a technology that is unique and proprietary that can address the problem that clearly appears in that industry. And there's the possibility of assembling an amazing team to support the development and creation of that company. It takes all of these ingredients together to really create something successful. And so when I saw the opportunity that existed at NetraMark, and when I understood the drivers of the pharmaceutical industry and the very clear levels of difficulties and challenges when it comes to running a clinical trial, and Dr. Pani could talk a lot about that. There isn't really much of an argument to be had about is there a problem to solve. So then it really, for me, just became about the investigation of the technology and seeing if I could assemble a team around this. And I've been fortunate enough to have many wonderful people join this team like Luca, and I'll turn it over to you again, Rebecca.
It's amazing to hear, and I know how passionate you are about this company, and it takes so much passion. And I've understood and learned how difficult it is to make a company successful in this sector. And so building a team and having a passionate CEO like yourself that's just never going to give up and keep pushing this company forward and building the team, like you've said, is just so important. So I'm now really excited to hear about Dr. Pani. You've had a remarkable career across your global regulatory agencies. Can you tell us about your title and how your journey from leading, the Italian Medicines Agency to advising the EMA and working in academia led you to be a part of NetraMark?
Yes, before joining NetraMark, I was an academic, and I came back to be an academic. I am a professor of clinical pharmacology in Modena and Reggio Emilia in Italy, and of clinical psychiatry in Miami currently. So, but I spent, as you were saying, several years as a regulator. I was the director general of the Italian Medicine Agency, which is both a regulator and a payer, something which might come up very interesting in the world of AI, by the way. And also I serve in several committees of the European Medicine Agency. And one thing that I saw in these roles was that promising drugs, they failed in late stage trials due to the fact that patients were heterogeneous. We knew that they were heterogeneous. So translated this in lay terms, it means that maybe 25, 30%, even 40% of the patient might respond very well. 60% will not respond. Hence, the trial was a failure, technically. But those 40 patients were really working. For them, was really working. So Then I saw this incredible technology developed by George Arachi and his mathematical genius, and I saw that AI could make clinical trial more efficient, more insightful. It's like those effective therapies now are not lost anymore in the noise of the rest, which is very human if you think about it, particularly in what I do, which is psychiatry. That the heterogeneity is even more, right? It's more convoluted. So my goal here is really to ensure that our technology pushes the boundaries, but also meets the high evidentiary standards the regulator and clinician require. There is a thing that I should confess. Once a regulator, always a regulator. They prime your brain in some certain way, and you cannot remove that type of attitude. Everything is good, but you still have to bring me data, solid data, and very, very careful assessment. And I'm really and I close on this, but I'm really grateful and honored by the fact that NetraMark accepted the challenge of having a regulator, an active regulator, one that spends so much time in really making the rules inside. I'm not an active regulator anymore, of course, but inside the company. There is not an easy thing to accept, and George can witness this.
Yeah. So I know from what I'm hearing, you've obviously been in the industry for a very long time, and you have firsthand experience seeing this failure in the trial process, and NetraMark was really designed to solve that problem that you've been seeing for the last 25, 30 plus years.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, you go ahead.
It's like the Netra is like a mathematical augmented AI.
Yeah.
It's not just an AI. The other thing that we had the fortune to understand, oh, maybe the wisdom, I don't know what it was, but almost in the beginning, 3 years ago, when everybody was already going to the hype of LLM, you remember this, right? Oh, they will solve this, solve that. We understood that for some problem like this one, you needed to have another level of the game.
Yeah.
We didn't want LLM that would please us, or any AI that will confabulate around things that we were believing. We would not want AI that would rescue a failed trial. A failed trial is a failed trial. We want an AI, and this is exactly what AI does, with the Netra AI does, to enrich by few key variables, 3, 4 factors that make clinical sense, and how the characteristics of those population can be used to make a trial more efficient. Or, believe it or not, to kill a trial early, to say, look, there's no signal here. So don't spend hundreds of $millions, expose patients and family to hopes of something that will not come out of it. So this is what Netra AI was designed to do, and I'm very pleased to see that is actually delivering this. It is the machines or whatever they are, these entities, they are delivering that level of promise.
Brilliant. So George, you are absolutely fantastic explaining kind of in a nutshell what this company does. How can you describe in the simplest terms, what the company does and how the core problem you're solving is for the biopharma industry?
Yeah, and there's two sides to this, right? I'm often facing the capital markets trying to explain this is a very complicated thing that we're trying to tackle. It's not a simple thing to explain often, and I think that is a challenge sometimes for investors. They're trying to understand, where does this NetraMark technology fit within the scope? And in the simplest of terms, I mean, Luca can talk to this in much more detail than I can, but in the very simplest of terms, clinical trials fail at a very high rate. The question really becomes, is there some form of subpopulation within the trial that perhaps is causing the trial to be a failure or to not meet the endpoint as the ultimate target within the pharmaceutical industry? The problem, though, is often, I think about 60 to 65% of clinical trials have less than 200 patients enrolled. So these aren't massive data sets. Where you normally point AI in the world of large language models is in these massive data sets. I'm going to ingest this humongous data set, and I'm going to use AI to help do drug discovery, et cetera. Those are all natural places to point AI, and there's a lot of people doing that. But then when you get into the actual clinical trial itself, and when at the end of each phase of a trial, you get a readout, you get data that tells you, okay, there were some patients enrolled in this trial, there was some data collected, and you get a readout. The reason there's partly not a lot of people pointing at this with AI is, okay, if you had 100 people in a trial, 150 people in a trial, it's not a natural place to point artificial intelligence. And this is where Dr. Joe Geraci started looking and saying, would there be a way mathematically for me to ingest these quote unquote smaller but complicated and heterogeneous data sets and figure out if there was some kind of what we would call model-derived subpopulation that could be affecting the trial. And ultimately, really, that's what we're doing. We're ingesting those data sets. We're finding these model-derived subpopulations. And then the question really becomes, well, that's great. What do you now do with what you've discovered? And that's where we pass it over to the pharmaceutical company. And as Luca mentioned, this term enrichment. And in the world of enrichment, to translate this for everybody out there, when we talk enrichment, we're basically saying, you know, if you take the study population and the big question mark is who do I include, who do I exclude? If you could enrich that with some knowledge from the phase, right, so that you can prospectively, and without getting into all these details about retrospective analysis and prospective designs, et cetera, we're a company that's generating these insights so that prospectively pharma companies can more intelligently design trials as they move forward into subsequent phases.
Brilliant. Yeah. And so from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, NetraMark focuses specifically on the phase 2, and there's 3 phases of the trial. Using their AI to inject the data to either help you make your phase 2, which has a very high failure rate, more successful, or tell you you should stop the trial and save yourself potentially hundreds of millions of dollars.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
Which sounds incredibly necessary. I mean, companies waste a ton of money, and also you don't want to get to that failure point, and ultimately wasting money is the biggest thing for investors, and you just want to go through.
And Rebecca, there are 3 chunks of situations that occur at the end of a phase 2 trial. We do also analyze phase 3 data as well, just for clarity. But at the end of that phase 2 trial, and you get your readout and you start looking at what happened, you either did not meet your endpoint, you had a quote unquote negative or failed trial. You have a marginally successful trial, which means, yeah, you met the endpoint, but it wasn't like, oh my goodness, what a successful trial. Or you have a wildly successful trial. And in all of those situations, there's a role for NetraMark to play.
Brilliant. Now I want to get into more of the science and innovation specifically. Dr. Luca Pani, I would like to bring this question to you. I've heard you refer to Netra AI as a paradigm shift for the industry. Can you explain what you mean by this and why this matters for clinical trials and the industry as a whole?
This comes from an old book by Thomas Kuhn in 1962. He wrote The Structure of Scientific Revolution. And he mentioned the paradigm shift. And he mentioned the paradigm shift by giving an example and saying what really a paradigm shift is that under the same actual condition of the data that you have in front of you, the regular way you run a clinical trial, due to a new technology, a new advancement in science, a new discovery, you take a completely different perspective on that, on the same thing. Okay, so you shift the paradigm by which this is analyzed. In this term, actually, AI is more of a paradigm shock technology because it is like the platform of the data that you are analyzing moves continuously, and this is essential, Rebecca, in an exponential way. In an exponential way. AI multiplies and learns. The machines that we are using today and we are evolving today are no way similar to the one of 3 years ago. The reason being that these have, they are generators and they are transformer and they are pre-trained. This is what the GPT acronym comes from, right? Generator, pre-trained, transformer. And those particular machines that we have, they are pre-trained constantly on public data that we have, and they analyze this and are giving perspective that, again, is a paradigm shift that we don't actually knew before. So, for instance, data that have been in the public domain for decades, and we public like NIH and NIMH and so on, will be reanalyzed completely by this machine and offer a new perspective that we never thought about, that no human can identify. The reason is that the pattern analysis, to put together several points in a patterns and picking this like in a haystack in the trillions of variables is impossible for the human brain. But for a machine, this is very easy. Now, the point that George was alluding to is that to make other understand in the regular traditional way, to understand that, well, this is like statistical, covariant analysis. You're doing a covariant analysis. You are taking different variables and put them together. It's not really what is the case. So we need to make them understand that this is completely changing the structure of the game. If this was a game, it's something very serious instead.
And one thing that's obviously very specific about the technology is the creation of personas that define, patient subpopulations. This changes the way the pharmaceutical companies design, or does this change the way pharmaceutical companies design or rescue their clinical trials?
Yeah, this we call personas, and that what George was alluding to is the model-derived subpopulation. What is interesting here that these are a subset of specific individuals. Like persona is a Latin word that comes from the original mask that was used in theater. They were called the personas. In both in Greek theater and in the Latin thing. And why? Because persona were deceiving in a way. You put this mask, and then the real you was behind the mask. And that's exactly what Netra AI does. It discovers the personas, who you really are, what your characteristics are.
And so is there some misconceptions when it comes to using AI in the clinical trials? Maybe when it comes to the personas that NetraMark is proving wrong?
Yeah, the biggest misconception in AI is that there is a black box, right? Can be trusted or understood. And Netra on this is absolutely proving that wrong. The platform, and this is what the regulatory hat comes in. Sorry, I told you this in the beginning. The platform is designed to be fully explainable. Okay. If it finds clear, small combinatorial variables to define each persona, and we can articulate exactly why those patient groups respond differently to a treatment. So we don't only give you a predictive results, we give you a rationale that clinician and scientists can validate for themselves. Okay? That will make sense. The machine does not overfit, does not give you, this is the ideal scenario of an ideal case, but then those patients do not exist. This is also fundamentally different from deep neural network. They might say they have an accuracy of 90%, but then you don't have any idea why this is happening. And we have run, in fact, experiments by comparing our machine with deep neural network and big LLM, showing that we beat them in the ability of finding this persona. Another thing that is very important as a regulator, if I come in, imagine this as I'm an inspector of a drug that you are producing, right? I come into your factory. I want to know, where is this drug coming from? How is the pH? How are the ingredients that you put in? What is the boiling point? I need to analyze the entire line of control that brings the drug to the market, okay? The same thing is going to be for Netra AI. It has to be explainable in each step. Okay, I cannot say, and then I took all these magical numbers, I put it in, I have an algorithm. The magical word today is an algorithm, right? You have to say algorithm at least once a day. So it's an algorithm, and then pop, you have the results.
Yeah.
FDA, EMA, PMDA will not accept this. We want to know exactly the explanatory around the final result. How did you come to that conclusion? And most importantly, and I finished, do not force an explanation on every patient. This, I want to say this is very important. The machine, the unique characteristic of the machine is the ability to say, I don't know. Sometimes this AI says, I cannot make any sense of this particular persona. But this I can explain. This will respond to placebo. This will respond to the treatment. These guys, I don't quite know. And I cannot force an explanation, no matter how you try to convince me. So that's for us, it's very important.
Is that still a valuable information and feedback to get the AI to say that it doesn't have an explanation for it?
Yes, it's very similar to a clinical decision. I just remind everybody that the first time HIV was discovered clinically, it was discovered because the most expert among the most expert individual in infectious disorder, when he saw the first individuals in the Western world that had this disease, said, "This is something new." And when they asked him, "Why you say this, Professor?" "Because I've never seen it."
There you go. Pretty straightforward. And I'm curious too, like when it comes to further validating the platform, are you working with any partners or collaborating with any partners such as the NIMH? And could you explain how the NIMH is and if they're and how their work is leading to a peer review and publication pieces?
NIMH stands for National Institute of Mental Health. It's the lead US federal agency for research on mental health and is one of the 27 institutes of the NIH. Essentially, they've been and they are at the forefront of mental health research. And we enter a research collaboration with NIMH to advance and apply NetraMark machine learning to analyze some of the clinical trial data in the public domain that they had, specifically the trials on ketamine in various psychiatric disorder. And by using this, we were able to identify variables that characterize ketamine responders, placebo responders, and even predictors of adverse event. And this, this came up to be a publication peer review that I don't know if I can disclose or not where is the journal, but I rather not. That has been accepted in a very, very prominent journal. What is interesting of this again is the fact that this was a strong collaboration with Carlos Zarate and Elizabeth Ballard of NIMH, and they have analyzed this data with whatever they had at their disposal. But the machine offered a different perspective. Again, a paradigm shift. Here you go.
And Rebecca, just to add to that, these collaborations are important because at the end of the day, when you're introducing something new to an industry, the first level of resistance is going to be, well, this is great, NetraMark. You're telling me how great your technology is. Of course, you're going to say it's great, but how do you validate it beyond yourself as an organization? And you do that only in two ways. You enter into collaborations, which allow you to output publication pieces that you submit to third parties, and they peer review it. So it's not NetraMark saying this is valid. The peer review group and the publications either accept or don't accept what you put out there. Great way to validate your technology in a third-party way. And then the other way is contracts. So as you get contracts, that's the market essentially validating to say, yes, I will use your technology to analyze my clinical trial data. Those are the ways that you're going to validate any technology in this industry.
And touching on contracts, I know that you recently announced a partnership with a major contract research organization, Worldwide Clinical Trials. What is the status of that partnership, and when do you think it'll be fully onboarded?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. This is a large organization. It's not a small organization. They operate in over 65 countries around the world. And we signed that contract in April, and I do get the question, what the heck's going on there? Well, we just finalized our onboarding recently within the last week. So it's quite a process. Any organization within the pharmaceutical industry per se, you're often having to do quality assurance reviews, which essentially is that organization doing an audit of what are all the standard operating procedures. How do you manage my data? How am I confident that you're a good caregiver of my data, for example, right? Because the data is really where all the value is here. Essentially, that's where all the information is. So there's an extensive quality assurance and onboarding process that you have to go through. We've just now gone through that, and now we're move on to the next phases with Worldwide, which is the commercialization process.
Incredible. So the company is really, I mean, you've really gotten past the point of proving the technology. You're looking for third parties to endorse it, which just kind of gives maybe potential clients credibility in your company and your software. And then you're really at the point where you're developing contracts and getting into potentially a revenue chapter for the company.
Absolutely. That's exactly where we are. And I think we're 3 years in. The first year was just organizing, bringing in the new team, et cetera. Then the next couple of years has been essentially figuring out how are we going to penetrate this industry. And one quick note on that, because I often get, well, what's the moat around this? And so, yes, we can go into a long diatribe about the technology, and there certainly are trade secrets there and proprietary mathematics that is part of the moat. One of the moats I actually tell people is the industry. I've been in many industries, and I can tell you, Luke has been in this his whole career, but I'm new to this industry, relatively speaking, now. And what I can tell you is because there's a regulator hovering over top, it's different. The industry operates differently. So one of the moats around the company is commercialization and penetration. When I was speaking with Gartner Group about their hype cycle about a year and a half ago, they told me that typically when you introduce a new technology into the pharmaceutical industry, you're 3 years of no revenue and proof of value. It's very difficult to have this industry adopt a new technology. Heaven forbid, as Luca has said,
Mhm.
a paradigm shift technology, because often when it's something new that you're introducing, there's other companies that are also, there's competitors, straight direct competitors. So it's like if I told you I've invented a cup, and you're like, oh, I know about cups, I use cups. Oh, now you're just determining, is my cup better than your cup? But
Right.
imagine if I came to you with a thing that you've never heard of, and I want to introduce it into your industry that has a regulator hovering over top. That makes it astronomically more difficult. And what I've been witnessing and what Luca has been telling me now for a while is that this industry is kind of slow, 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 fast. It
Right.
basically goes painfully slow, and you have to have the stomach to endure this, which I think over the last 3 years we're doing. And now we're entering into the cusp of commercialization.
Exciting. Very exciting for especially for the company and for investors that would be looking at this company. And speaking of regulators, George, NetraMark has a critical path innovation meeting with the FDA this December. This is a pretty rare opportunity for an AI company. What are you hoping to accomplish in that meeting?
I'll really turn this one over to Luca. We have a regulator here on the call, essentially. He spent his
Okay.
career in and around the regulatory world. And so we're very excited to have a critical path innovation meeting with the FDA and Luca's really led that path forward for us. I'll turn it over to Luca to talk a little bit about, expectations going into this meeting.
Yeah, so thank you. The critical path innovation meeting with the FDA is a basically a type of meeting that the agency grants where when they see that you have a possible innovation that might affect across different areas of the agency. In this case, we are in the digital world, in the digital health technologies, right? And so the FDA reserves this to particularly novel and promising technology, and they are interested. So it means that in this meeting, several divisions of the FDA might come, and not only the clinical part, pharmacometrics might come, statistical, AI, of course, and machine learning, which the FDA is building quite substantially in the last year and a half, I would say, and in this way, in the best case scenario, we would have a more formal recognition of Netra AI. For instance, we can explore with FDA whether or not we have a drug development tool qualification program. So can Netra AI be a technology that for trial enrichment that sponsor can use? We do not run clinical trial ourselves. This is not in the remit of NetraMark. A minimum we could have. I personally hope the FDA scientists and reviewers will be familiar with this new approach. Maybe could be interested in saying how this is unique. It's different from what we have heard. And of course, for me particularly, I'm completely biased on this. This is a way that I brought up almost immediately to the team and says, this is all good, as George was saying, but you got to go in front of my people. Then when I still call them my people, but that if they put not really a stamp of approval, but at least an interest, and they say, okay, this seems to be really innovative and can be game changer. And then you have, as George was saying, manuscript approved by peer review, the way science proceed. That will be a proof of confidence also to go in front of the rest of the industry. Let me make a final comment on this innovation into pharmaceutical company that I've witnessed all my life. It's very peculiar, and for you, Rebecca, might be even very interesting to explore in terms of your series here. How come that these companies have an incredible innovative scientific and technological advancement, but then think about gene therapies, for instance, think about RNA technology, right? Monoclonal antibody. And then when it comes to the market penetration and actually the reimbursement, so the way we patient can access this incredible technology that they have developed, the scenarios of those modeling in pharmacoeconomics is very rudimental. So they are completely misaligned in the producing a drug and in getting the drug into the market. And this, what is interesting here is that traditionally these two silos were divided into companies. Okay, I get the FDA approval, I get the registration and the label, I give it to you. Now you go and you make the marketing thing. AI is disrupting this as well in a significant way. And how? Because AI can analyze real world evidence data. So what happens when you are actually in the market, in the efficacy and safety of a drug, not in a clinical trial, which is like a very organized and protected space, if you want, but in the real life. And real life becomes much more convoluted. There's a lot of variables, there's a lot of patterns, a lot of things that humans cannot analyze. Now I have to choose whether or not I need to reimburse this drug or not. That's another space where Netra can make a big difference, because the modeling would do that as well. It's agnostic in terms of the specifics. It works anyway in enrichment criteria. Again, it's an enrichment principle, no? I rather pay for those who have the best advantages. That is a very typical enrichment criteria.
And being a professional in the regulatory space, from a science perspective, how is Netra AI aligned with good machine learning practice and the FDA's digital health framework?
Well, this has been, we're very mindful of this. We follow very strictly the FDA, the good machine learning practice guiding principle in AI, where actually our map, this is how Dr. Geraci and his team map all the development process. For instance, the GMLP guideline states the AI system is designed to be tailored to the available data and reflects the intended use. And we exactly do this. We literally build for the kind of small, complex clinical trial data set that pharma works with. George was alluding to this. We are not against, we have a different take on the huge, among us, big data hype. We do not believe the quantity can replace for quality. So we rather have a very good, significant, we're not talking about few patients, we need hundreds of patients, but very good control quality data set rather than having 5,000 patients. There are or 500,000 patients that are coming from all over the place. There is a saying, Rebecca, junk in, junk out. Mm-hmm. So no AI could repair or build significant data if the data you start with are wrong, are dirty, are contaminated, are not biometrically identified. So AI, you have to think about this. Another principle that we keep very close to our heart. AI of Netra is a human AI team. There's not an AI in isolation. There is a lot of human specific action, also to take responsibility, also, if I may say so, legal responsibility. So you cannot say the AI told me so. The AI selected this population, and so I run the trial based on this. No mistakes on my part. Doesn't work like this. You need to vet this, and so it's an augmented intelligence technology. It's not a substitute intelligence technology.
Right, that makes absolute sense. I mean, and turning to you, George, what does this, regulatory engagement with the FDA coming up mean for investors and partners? And does the FDA recognition open the door to any broader adoption across pharma?
Well, when you're talking to investors, investors are always using terms like product market fit, and they're looking for validation or something external to the company. Investors are tainted. So
Yeah.
when a company tells them something about themselves, the first thing the investor is going to say to themselves, man, maybe. They don't believe people, right? And especially, when you're talking your own book. And so our job is to collaborate with groups like the NIMH. It's to get in front of the FDA so that we can get feedback from the FDA. We can get guidance from the FDA about where we can work collaboratively with them so that we can better understand where we go with this technology, et cetera. And in this particular industry where, as I said earlier, there's a regulator hovering over top, it means a lot to the pharmaceutical companies to know that you've had engagement. You're not hiding from the regulator. We have nothing to hide. We're here to engage. We're here to be open. We're here to get the regulator to better understand what we're doing. And so I think, and obviously a lot of this from the regulatory perspective has come from working with Luca, is that it's better to go, as he says, often and early in front of the regulator. And so I believe these types of meetings do nothing but help investors feel more confident about what it is that NetraMark's saying about themselves and what they can do in the marketplace. And yes, this does open broader, adoption capabilities because the pharmaceutical companies ultimately are a little worried. They have to go sit in front of this group, this body. I've been in a lot of industries. I don't go and ask, present my case to a third party to say, here's what I did something, here's what came of it. Can I now get approval? That's not normal in a lot of industries, right? And so for this industry, this is a very important step.
And speaking more on the marketplace, how big is the opportunity for explainable AI in clinical trial analytics? And where do you see NetraMark in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so this AI term in the pharmaceutical, it's so overused. There's so many companies that are just slapping AI onto their name because that's the the
Trendy.
taste du jour or whatever you want to call it. It's the flavor of the month, etc. And so when we say, what's the opportunity for explainable AI, we really look at it and say, at the end of the day, what are we really trying to do? We believe that there are many potentially good drugs that aren't going to make it to market for a variety of reasons. And what are we really here trying to do? We're trying to actually help people get better in whatever disease area they might have. And if we can actually use a technology such as Netra AI to help get precision medicine to the market, to help people with whatever it is that ails them, I think that's something that's important. So I believe this is a massive opportunity. And I believe that AI is not going to take over the world and everything. There's always a place for human interpretation. And from an ethical perspective, there are many places that I think these worlds of humans and AI come together. I think it's a massive multi-billion-dollar industry. There's thousands and thousands of trials. And if you look at the overall clinical trial success rates from adoption of an idea of a drug through to commercialization is about a 90% failure rate. And if you look at late phase, you could have a successful phase 2 and you probably still have a 50-60% chance you're going to fail in phase 3. So the failure rates are high. There's thousands of clinical trials going on. There's many opportunities. And where do I see NetraMark over the next couple of years? We're really now into market penetration and commercialization mode. So ultimately, what are we looking for? Client engagement. We're looking at collaborations that are prolific, that help move science forward and move the industry forward. And we're looking for contracts. And we're looking to become a profitable, EBITDA positive cash flow company. That's what we want to do.
And what sounds like you're very close to becoming or nearing that stage.
Of course, yeah, we are. We've made a lot of progress.
And Dr. Luca Pani, from your view as a regulator and scientist, what does the future of drug development look like once tools like Netra AI become the standard practice?
Uh, I I have no doubt. I mean, I have a lot of doubt, and I might sound assertive, but I'm not assertive. But I have no doubt that AI will be integral to clinical trials, as statistics is today. In fact, I quite don't understand the difficulty. No, I make this as a joke that George might have in selling this to the investors, because there is no doubt the AI will be integral to clinical trials. Just no one will run a trial without the biostatistician today, right? It's part of the actually called statistical analysis plan that is agreed with the FDA or EMA or PMDA around the world. Now, in the next year, not in 5 years, next year we do the same interview 1 year from now, at the end of 2026. No one will design or analyze a trial without AI assistance. Yeah. You probably have seen, all the different take on, how can you do peer review with AI? How can you write a manuscript with AI? Where is that gone now after 12 months? Huh? You've seen the Lancet, you see JAMA, you see all this beautiful editorial by Ron Perez and his group the other day, saying that the AI is part of all this. So we will have AI-driven trial design, where we have a planning stage. A system like Netra AI will help choose the optimal patient eligibility criteria. They will pick up the right endpoints, and even they would suggest the novel biomarker to collect. Then you need to run it through your clinical augmented LLM, another thing that Netra has in his own right, a proprietary one. And then during the trial, AI monitors the incoming data in real time, and it flags if a certain subgroup of patient is responding exceptionally well or not, and without breaking, of course, the blind, without affecting in any way the randomization principle. You see the regulator coming up again. Then the AI analyzes these patterns, and then he asks to this. I think we should change the statistical analysis plan. I think we are recruiting less than you were meant to recruit. What is going on? You said 100 patients in 6 months, has been 4 months, and you have 50 patients. What's going on? You're not going to make it, So these things are going to be analyzed by AI. AI will analyze the patterns of all this. So rather than trial and errors, I think they become trials and insights. And the insights are going to be AI driven.
It seems like a no-brainer that AI would become a very integral part of all of these processes in this industry. Like any industry, I think it's creeping its way into everything, and it just seems like absolutely a year from now that it'll just be a very important and necessary part in any phase or any clinical trial or any part of this whole pharma sector. Absolutely. So
it's certainly not going away.
It's definitely not going away. It's growing, yeah. And you guys seem like you're at the forefront of it. And obviously, this company's been around for a while, and you have an early adopter advantage, I'm sure. To wrap up this whole interview, what would you like to see a year from now as a headline around NetraMark AI?
From my perspective, it's really quite simple. We are a public traded company. We need to deliver value to shareholders. So I always use my fiduciary responsibility as CEO and director and officer of NetraMark. And so with that vein in mind, I really see us going through a ramp up of contracts, collaborations, moving towards an EBITDA positive company so that we're cash flowing, et cetera. So those are the absolute, I like to keep things as simple as humanly possible. So we've got kind of those financial mechanical drivers. And then there is the why are we all doing this at the end of the day? We really do, and Luca more so than me, because this has been an industry that he's been part of his whole career. But I think being a part of something that investors can make money at, I think is important, but also being a part of something that can have an impact, a lasting impact on an industry that can actually help people over time, I think it has to be part of someone's investment thesis. Yes, we all want to make money, we all get that, but doing something that, as Luca said, is a paradigm shift that can have a real monumental impact on the future of drugs, what drugs are available, making more drugs available to people to help people, I think is a really critical element and something that I would be proud to see if we were to look at the headlines a year from now.
Yeah, it sounds like this is actually probably one of the most exciting points of this company's timeline, really. It's such a turning point that I would expect there's going to be a lot of headlines and press releases and announcements coming out of the next 12 months.
100%. Lots on the pipeline over the next 12 months.
And I feel like I've taken up a lot of your time, and I really appreciate you both joining me today and sharing this exciting story. I definitely want to encourage any investors that are watching this to, look up the company on their website, read their corporate presentation, reach out to the company and their investor relations team and ask them any questions. There's a lot of exciting headlines coming for this company, and I'm really excited to share it with everyone on this channel today. So thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having me. And just to throw that out there, just because I am the CEO of the company, we trade on the CSE under the symbol AIAI, on the OTCQB under AINMF, and on Frankfurt Tradegate under PF0. Sorry, I had to throw that in there,
Of
Rebecca.
course. Of course, I appreciate that. I'll also include that in the description, as well as links to the company's website. Again, thank
Perfect.
you so much, George and Dr. Pani.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.